All I want is to hold you like the body holds the rain, and let our some memories fade. All I want is to hold you like the stone cloud holds the rain, and let our some memories fade. Let our some memories fade.
Welcome to Art Talk Music. You are listening to Wild Humans. That's a song off of their self-titled album, which is set to release very soon. That song is called Muscle Memory. I had the wonderful chance to sit down and talk with Julian Wild and April Lisette to get into their minds of how Wild Humans came to be, what these songs really are about, and how music can really be a tool of healing in all of our lives. It was a beautiful conversation, and I know you're going to enjoy it. I encourage you to go check them out. They're going to be playing New Year's Eve at the Launchpad here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with the red light cameras, as well as they'll be doing a listening party for their album on January 6th. And all of that information is brought up later in the podcast. We're also going to include some links to their Facebook page, their BandCamp page, and some tickets to that New Year's Eve show, so you can go really follow them and support them. But for now, we're going to get to this episode. And at the end of this episode, we're going to jump right into some of their songs, specifically one that I love. And then I'll talk a little bit in between them. For now, please help me welcome my friends, Wild Humans, to Art Talk Music. What's going on? I've got Julian and I've got April here of Wild Humans in the studio. What's going on, guys? Welcome to Art Talk Music.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
Thank you guys so much for coming on the show and coming to talk about your album, which I've heard quite a bit of over the time that you initially put out, kind of the first phase of it, but really now you've got a big push celebrating the official release of it. Tell me a little bit about that, Julian.
Yeah, it's this has been 2 years in the making, and I'm sure you can see I'm very excited. I've lived like all over the United States for the last 2 years. We've recorded this in 3 different states and mixed and mastered and changed it, and we released it partially to our Kickstarter backers. That was how it all started. I had no idea how to make a record. I didn't have the funding for the studio time to hire musicians and pay them what they're worth, so we decided to ask people for money to help us make it. And we raised $5,500 from 65 backers, friends, family, some strangers, all over the U.S. And we created a whole bunch of rewards for them. We created stickers, art and coloring books. We created a CD that had 16 tracks on it. And we actually put that out a year before the album was completely done. So they have this instance of the recording that's a completely unique thing that we made just for them. And after we had that 16-track album, then I went through a cutting, editing, and reimagining phase. And I remixed everything. I kind of came at it from another angle of how can I make this album as listenable, as beautiful, as accessible as it could be. And so we actually ended up in the end with a 10-track CD, and we ended up with a 6-track EP. So we took some of the songs that we cut, we released them as like a thank you for your patience kind of a thing. Yeah. And now what we have is we have this 10-track album that's just front to back, clean, professional, beautiful, accessible. And yeah, we're celebrating it. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
How exciting, man.
It's so exciting.
So what is the process been like? I mean, you've been part of this. Wild Humans has been in existence, if I'm not mistaken, about what, 4 or 5 years or so? How many years have you guys been going?
2016, actually.
Excuse me, so earlier.
It's been earlier.
That's amazing that it's such a recent project, and you guys have developed such a sound already as a band. I mean, how long have you guys been playing together?
Well, okay, so we first met actually in theater, in musical theater. It was back in 2008. I had not done anything in a while, and a bunch of friends were like, they're doing Aida. at Albuquerque Little Theater. You've got to audition for it. We just can't see anybody else doing it. You got to do it. You got to do it. I'm like, okay. And so I went in, I auditioned, and I got the starring role, the title role of Aida. And then for callbacks, I walk in, and there's this guy. It's Julian. And for whatever reason, we made this immediate connection.
It was energy.
It was immediate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as soon as they were wanting two people to come up, so he won the role of Radames, by the way. So opposite of me. And so when they wanted to have people come up at callbacks, he looked right at me and was like, let's do this. And it was just this chemistry. You don't find that very often with somebody. And it's a big stage. This is a big show. Elton John and Tim Rice's Aida. It just was an immediate, like an attraction, like on all levels. And we worked so well together. And yeah, we got the part, and there it is.
That's kind of a strategy. Like, that's what you do. If you're into callbacks for a musical show and you really want the lead role, you got to look around the room and think, who would I be good starring opposite? Like, who's going to get the role that is, like, I wanted to know who was going to be Aida.
Of course.
At the time, April had these dreadlocks.
Not dreadlocks. They were braids.
They were braids. They were like I don't know if they were extensions or if they were real.
They were extensions.
They were so long. And her voice was powerful and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And her presence was beautiful. And I was like, oh, I have to like stand next to that person because she's going to be in the show. If I want to be in the show, then I need to be next to that person. That was exactly what happened. So yeah, I positioned myself there, and then we ran that show for 5 weeks at ALT. We sold it out almost every night, and just singing together in that chemistry, we became friends right away.
Immediate.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't think anything is by chance, but it's pretty ironic and pretty wonderful as well that the very first time that I got a chance to see Julian was performing in Aida whenever I saw both of you guys playing at the Albuquerque Little Theater, because my friend Maya Faye Rees, her parents, I believe, are the owners, or they ran that little theater
at the Growing Stage.
And she told me about it, and I went and I remember that was the first time I heard his voice, and I was like, God damn, who's that man singing? Like, he can sing his ass off. And then I've later met his father, and then we later met each other through the bands and stuff like that. But how funny is that?
That's so crazy. So, and of course, his dad was also in Aida.
I know.
He played my father.
Yeah.
Which was so cool. It's just an amazing connection. An amazing connection.
So,
yeah. Have
you always done musical theater? Have you guys both always done musical theater? Is that something you guys did just kind of like after college, or what?
No, for me, that's what I wanted to get into. Like, I went to New Mexico Highlands University in Las Vegas on a soccer scholarship, and originally it was just music. I'm a classically trained pianist, and so that's what I was planning on just doing is music. And then I had always been around musical theater my entire life, but never thought about being a part of a production. And then I got into it in college, and I loved it. And that was it. Like, this was what I wanted to do, musical theater, strictly. Then, of course, after I graduated from college, you take some time off, and like things happen. And I hadn't done anything I graduated in 2002, and so I didn't do anything for 6 years until Aida came around.
Wow.
And once that happened, I was just hooked, and I was just doing show after show after show. And then I eventually left about 8 years ago and moved to Phoenix for somebody, and started getting into professional theater out there. And then I was signed to a professional theater company in Tucson and did musical theater out there. And then just kind of put it off because of this move for somebody else. So it's always very hard to try and be in a place and try and do something in this industry, like musical theater, or even music in general, when you're not there for a very long time. So I moved around for this person. And so that kind of was put on hold. And then when I came back in 2016, Julian was the first person. I was going through a divorce at the time, and I was very devastated. It was a shock. And when I came home, I didn't leave my mom's house. Julian was the first person I reached out to when I came home. And he told me about the show he was doing at Tractor. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to go because I wanted to see him. I needed to see him, actually. And that was the first time I left my mom's house after my separation. And then he looked at me, and then we just got into this project. But as far as musical theater, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that was my whole, I mean, when I was growing up, so my dad's an actor, as you know,
Yes.
as we said, and I hope he listens to this. Hi, Dad.
What's going on, Pops?
And if you ever go see his work anywhere he's performing, his name's Gene Corbin.
Incredible artist, incredible voice. Obviously, that's where you get it from. You know, I'm sure your mom's got a beautiful voice too.
I
can't just say.
wish that I could sing like my dad. I'll never be able to. His voice is a special, blessed thing on earth. I cannot even tell you. Without you hearing it, you'll never know. So please go hear Gene Corbin sing somewhere where he's doing it. And yeah, when I was a little kid, I saw my dad in Big River with Albuquerque Civic Light Opera at Pope Joy Hall when I was 5 years old. He was playing the role of Jim, who's the slave that Huck Finn runs away with and befriends, right? And Albuquerque Civic Light Opera at the time was playing at Pope Joy Hall. And they had the New Mexico Symphony Orchestra was their pit orchestra. They had a 32-piece orchestra in the pit, and it was local people doing a local production in a 2,000-seat roadhouse. And now Pope Joy has The Lion King in it, and it has all these. They have the Ovation series, and they bring all these touring acts in. You rarely get local funded productions, local actors, directors, producers, and companies putting their stuff on that level of a stage in Albuquerque. But at the time, Albuquerque Civic Light Opera was killing it. And so my dad got this role because he can just sing. And when I saw him performing on stage when I was 5 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. That was the truth to me. I wanted to stand up there like my dad. The next Christmas, I was 6 years old. It was 1994. Yeah, maybe my math's bad, but I think it was 1994. I did The Music Man with Musical Theater Southwest, and I was like, second kid on the left who was in the band, but they just gave me a flute. And if you've ever seen The Music Man, there's just one note all the kids play, and they don't tell you what note it is. They just tell you to just make a noise with your instrument, it's like da 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 da. And it's just awful noise all the kids band makes because this dude's a con man. He's not a band leader. He's just like teaching them this music that doesn't really exist. So I was in that show, and that was my first musical. And I was on stage with Albuquerque Civic Light Opera from age 6 until age 21. And actually, Albuquerque Civic Light Opera, unfortunately, doesn't exist anymore. It eventually changed over and became what is now Musical Theater Southwest. And they still do great shows, have their own place here. But after their sort of glory days declined, I wasn't feeling it as much. I didn't like the smaller stages. I didn't like the smaller audiences. The bands kept getting smaller and smaller, and eventually got replaced with a CD. And you were singing along, you were recording. And for me, the magic of musical theater and opera or performance in general is having live musicians, having live technicians, having a big audience that's involved. And if you're going to do proscenium musical theater, do something big. So that was my background with it. My dad's an actor, and my mom's actually a stage manager. So all three of us, the whole family, we didn't go camping, we didn't go fishing. We did theater, we did Tech Week. That was our whole pastime. So all the way from there to when I met April, I had done 50 shows, and that was my background. My background was theater, and theater kind of brought me to music. My father's also a pretty good songwriter and singer.
Amazing.
And if you see him, I think you'll see there's a theatricality in him that goes way back in his history too. So I learned everything that I know from him, and I kind of walk in his shoes in that way still to this day. But yeah, when April came back from being divorced, I just got out of a 5-year relationship that I was sure was going to last forever. And I was very desolate, and there was a lot of problems I was having in my life making anything work for me. And the only thing that got me through that time was my guitar. And so I picked up my guitar and I started writing music. And the first show I ever played solo, but calling myself Wild Humans, because it was that Batman thing. I wanted to be more than a man. I wanted to be an idea. That was like my whole idea. So it was like,
that was going to be one of my questions, was how the name came about, but there it is.
It was.
The answers, ladies and gentlemen.
You had to, yeah. It's my superhero name is Wild Humans. I wanted to be an idea. And so I'm performing, and I had way too many dreams and my ideas were too big at the time. I couldn't perform them all by myself. I saw April in the audience and I was sitting there singing. And after I got off stage, I was like, hey, do you want to come be a part of this project? And she was like, yes, like right away.
Immediately. I mean, anything with this man, I won't say no to. But I think at the time, because we were both going through what we were going through, again, it was that connection. And I keep going.
Well,
Keep
I don't
going.
know. Maybe you're right, Claudia. Like maybe you're right. Like maybe it was not an accident. The timing was not.
I have began to believe more and more that there are no such thing as coincidences and things like that. It's like everything is meant to happen for a reason. And it definitely sounds like from y'all's story as to why the gravity is so thick between y'all as artists performing together and eventually being there to help birth this project, which is the beautiful band that's not going to be releasing something called Wild Humans. I mean, that's so cool, man. It's such a powerful expression. And what you were talking about earlier of getting through a hard time with your guitar seems like such a cliche for someone that is listening that's not a musician, but that is truly how musicians deal with therapy. On many, many occasions. I mean, as I'm sure is the same case with both of you, is after you deal with a breakup, it's like you're dealing so much with all of those emotions and all of those things that when you sit down and have some music come towards you, if you're playing it, making it, or just hearing it, all of a sudden you just kind of start basking in these notes and this vibration that maybe hopefully eventually comes into a song that you then have as a gem from the experience. But you truly do use the guitar to help you get through those situations. You truly do use your voice to help you sing and just uplift your spirits.
Absolutely.
You know? Much to the chagrin of the people in your life around you who process things, quote unquote, normally. Mm-hmm. You know, people who want to talk it out, people who maybe they go just like punch a bag for a while, or maybe they have a therapist.
Right.
I have a therapist. It's my music. This is how, and sometimes I don't even know the discovery that I'm going through or why. God, there was a really good movie that I saw recently, and I can't remember the name, but it had Maggie Gyllenhaal in it, and she is a kindergarten teacher. She got a kindergarten kid who just blurts out poetry. He just walks back and forth and does this really odd thing, like he's having like and it's to him, she teaches him like, okay, will you tell me when you think you want to say something like this? Just tell me. I have a poem. And really, it's I hate to be base about it, but it's as basic as I have to go to the bathroom. Like it's a basic natural need of this child, and the teacher recognizes it in the movie, this educator, and writes down his poems. And it turns out the kid's a savant. His words are incredible. And I think it is a natural bodily function, a spiritual function, a necessary human function of an artist to process using your instrument, using your art. And you do end up with a song that you play later, and it's fun to share it with the world, and it takes on a whole other life after that.
Oh, without a doubt. And the intention, it's not just something for you to heal, but then people kind of take it and make it their own song.
Right.
Definitely relatable. Makes it totally relatable.
Without a doubt. Mm-hmm. I think those moments you have to be the most honest. You know, it's like your true honesty of those small details that you think only you and her, or, you know, whatever the situation is, like calls for. It's like that's not always the case, because you happen to write those things in a lyric, and guess what? Everybody that hears that song connects to it because of those 3 lyrics, those 3 words in there or something. You know what? It's like, but I mean, it's the power of the arts. And I mean, it's been documented throughout cultures and history that we use it as therapy, and we use it to deal with suffering, and we use it to praise God, you know, and thank the Pachamama for, you know, the plants that have grown or whatever. You know?
Well, I tell Julian all the time that if it wasn't for him, I was in that place in such a dark hole, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And I know my family was super worried about me. I'd lost like 30 pounds in like 2 weeks.
Dang.
It was horrible. If it wasn't for him, I tell him all the time, you saved me. You saved my life, because I didn't know what I was going to do here. Like, I'm from here, born and raised. My family's here. I have lots of friends here, people that know me. But I didn't know how I was going to get on with my life after 7.5 years. You know, I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And so he came along and let's create some music. Okay.
Oh, because I was putting,
Heck yes.
I was putting a hurting on the local liquor store. I was going down the street. I was buying up everything that they had, man. I was at the absolute bottom of a wine bottle, of a tequila bottle. And honestly, you can get into these ugly places in your life. And I kept looking over in the corner, and it was longer and longer and longer between times when I picked up my guitar, taking it out of the case. And actually, I miss that guitar. I don't have that guitar anymore. Unfortunately, I miss that guitar. Like I conceived Wild Humans with that guitar. But it was like one day I was just so at the bottom of a barrel, and all of a sudden you look over and you see your instrument and you need to pick it up for some reason. And then the first thing you play feels, I don't know, serendipitous. It feels like something like the universe is almost playing through you. Like it needs you to be this voice, not just for yourself, but for something even bigger. And I was sure of it. Like the song on the album, Origin Square, it's not the oldest song on the album, but it was the first song I started writing deliberately for the album. And I started writing that guitar line with a brand new finger picking style, with a brand new way of writing melodies, with a brand new process of the order the song came out. And it was so pure. And I think that you can hear that in that song. I mean, it took me 2 years to make that song feel like I needed it to feel. But that was something bigger than myself speaking through me. That was not me writing a song that came out of my heart. It was almost something deeper, like where my roots are connected to the rest of the universe. That's where that song came out of me from. And I think that once I kind of, following that metaphor, once I kind of blossomed a little bit in that song, then I started to draw other similar energies to me with the art, with the music. And all of a sudden, like, April was there. Like, all of a sudden, like, reconnected with, like, my best friend since childhood, Ryan Jarvis, who plays percussion and mandolin on the album. Like, all of a sudden, like, Marin Hatch, who came in and played bass on the album, upright bass, and everybody loves Marin.
She's incredible.
One of the hardest working, smartest people. I'm pretty sure she's working on a doctorate in physics right now and playing professionally as a bassist, and just, I mean, a bright light in the world. All of a sudden, I had these like friends. I had like these energies that were around me that I didn't know I needed. And it came from the music. It didn't come from my effort. It came from this other power that was coming through me.
I think it's the path unfolding in front of you and in front of all of us. It's like, I think that thing you're speaking about the songs not coming from you. It's like we hope as artists to speak to the larger voice, the larger audience, the greater idea than just our mere, materialistic issues that we're dealing with. So it's like when you talk about being rooted and trying to speak, have the song or have the idea speak through you, it's something that's going to be alive longer than we are alive. And so even though often sometimes it also just comes from the ego, and sometimes it just comes from us wanting to put something down or other artists doing that, at the same token, you get those moments where truly the music just unfolds in front of you and you're like, holy crap, there's a whole song that just came out here from like one instance, and I don't even know like how it all just pieced itself together. It's like it wrote itself,
It does. Bob Dylan said, I'm a big fan of Bobby Zimmerman. I like Bob Dylan a lot. Mm-hmm. He said at one point pretty famously that he didn't write the songs. He was a conduit. He reached out and he took the songs from the ether.
Yeah. And
he just wrote them down. They were already out there. I always thought that was the coolest idea, because as a songwriter, I'd never read a quote, and no one had ever said something to me that I identified with so much that I didn't know how to put into words.
Yeah.
Because I don't sit down and think I'm going to write a song. I sit down and I've got like one hand on the universe and I got one hand on the paper, and I'm the middle. I'm not the origin. I'm the middle. I'm the one that's like being a conduit that's bringing this energy into the world. I'm not a very like energetic, spiritual, crystal, meditative person. I really don't think of myself that way. I'm a little bit heady. I'm into like science. I'm into fact. I'm into like finding how the universe works. I believe in humanity as an experiment.
Yeah. But I also appreciate that you allow the mysticism and the magic of music to still take over you, because it leads to the sounds in the way that you were just expressing to me about how it all unfolded sounded pretty magical, which is awesome. And I love that. There's nothing wrong with that, I think, for anyone, because at the end of the day, it's just what you make of things. You know what I'm saying? Like you could put into any frame that any story is crazy and people are crazy for believing it, but it's a story and people believe it,
If I see a ghost, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, right. You're going to believe it until the day you die, right? You're going to tell everyone, like, you weren't there. You didn't see that ghost. As an old man, you weren't there.
Like, no matter how silly it sounds, no matter how I sound like a basket case, yeah, man. Yeah. Like, music is the ghost that I've seen.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the writing process between you guys. So are you writing the majority of the music, Julian? Is April come in and help out with the supporting voice as a harmonist? Does she also help out with some material? Like, what's the role of everyone in the band? Because you already named everyone kind of that's playing in the band, which is monster band. Sounds wonderful. Who's on saxophone, by the way?
That is Lee Taylor.
Gotcha.
Who is Albuquerque based. He teaches at Bombs Music. He just
tremendous.
Anytime he touches a saxophone, it's a good time for anybody nearby.
Yeah.
And also we have Rob Janoff on electric violin, who was my middle school rock and rhythm band teacher.
The man.
He's the man. If you went through Jefferson Middle School in Albuquerque, he developed this award-winning program to have kids, instead of playing orchestra or band, you could play in rock and rhythm band. And instead of playing, Bach, you were playing Jimi Hendrix.
AC/DC.
Yeah, you're rocking out. You're playing Nirvana. He would change a lot of the lyrics so that parents.
They were PG.
Yeah, exactly. But you need that for kids and education. But yeah, what an incredible band, and we had a great engineer on the album too.
Who was the engineer?
Howard Wolkin at the Lab, which is now called Pharmadelica Studios. He actually, in the middle of us making the record, he moved his studios to Florida, and
you followed suit, right?
And
Initially,
I had to. I had to. We weren't done. We weren't done, and I knew it in my heart. I knew that we weren't done, and I saw no other way but, instead of visiting for a month or something like that, it wasn't going to be enough time and space to be able to create. So I said, okay, I'm going to come out there. And he was nice enough and gracious enough. If anyone who knows Howard, he is one of the sweetest humans alive, and he has this earnest positivity about him. And he said, yeah, come out. He had me live with him and pay very little for rent. And he's got a farm. He's got a farm out there, a 40-acre palm tree farm,
close to Naples, or where is it close to?
It's north of there, so it's the closest to Fort Myers. He lives in Cape Coral, and then if you drive just toward the Gulf of Mexico, you go over a bridge onto this island called Pine Island.
Just keep going until all the water covers your car.
You're there in the ocean, under the water. That's where the studio
Aquarius.
is. It was gorgeous, man. They got a pond on the studio that has an alligator in it. They have wild peacocks there, which is actually a little bit of a nightmare if you have a recording studio, no matter how soundproof your rooms are. Yeah, exactly. Just
so loud.
You don't record in the morning. You got to chase them off with
let them go. Yeah.
But no, it was paradise. But yeah, I had to follow him out there because his ear was right. Our relationship was right. He and I had another one of those kind of somewhat mystical meetings where I knew the first time we sat down and talked, I wanted him to be the engineer. And he taught me a lot about engineering and how to translate my creativity through software onto a record. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing. I'm making records. That's my medium. That's what I wanted to do with the project. Everything else, the performances, everything else was ancillary. I wanted to make a CD. But yeah, when I set out to do this, I think that I was trying to recover myself. And really all of the songs started in my notebook and on my guitar, in my house or in my backyard, or sometimes, you're driving down the road and you got to pull over and write something down.
Yeah.
There was a lot of these ideas that came out of this idea of rebirth and not allowing codependency to rule you. That's a lot of the album is. It is really at its core, it's a breakup album. It really is. And I think that energy resonated with other people. What I would do is I would write a song, but I wouldn't quite finish it. you know when you go back and
Without a doubt.
you edit your songs, you add a section, you take it away, you change the key, you change the tempo, you change the style
Right.
until it really feels true.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I think it's always evolving.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right. Oh, without a
Always
doubt.
evolving.
Oh, yeah.
I play songs today and I'm like, oh, I'm going to change this part up.
It has to. That's music. And it lives and it breathes. It has its own thing. And I think that was...
Although just a slight little note on that is like, it's not like comedians in the sense that it changes every night, because some artists certainly do change with certain genres. But by golly, you go hear the Rolling Stones and you want to hear the songs you heard back in the day the way that you heard them back in the day. And so it's like, it to a certain extent is what I mean.
You're right.
Yeah.
But I think it also, boy, we were talking about this in the car earlier. It also depends on your situation for what your intention is as an artist. Because, like I said, my intention for Wild Humans was to make a record. I actually didn't really care if we ever performed live. We did it live because we needed some money. We had a lot of fun. We had all this material and great musicians,
Right.
and we know the booking managers in town, and it was just natural. Our friends wanted to play with us, so we went out and put it on stage in the best way we could. But if you hear this record, if you've only ever heard Wild Humans play live, and you turn on this CD, this 10-track finished one, you're going to be confused. You're going to be like, this is not that band I saw live. And it's because I think you do something different for every situation, right?
And with Julian saying that, I think we were totally talking about this in the car on the way up here. We are both theatrical people. So in our minds, I think things are going to change even just a little bit with any live show that we do. Some of the songs are not always going to sound the same. I think for me, harmonizing with him, the harmonies will kind of stay the same. But even now, we were at my house kind of going over some of the songs. And because there were some little changes on the remastered album, I had to change my harmonies a little bit. But I think that's what's so cool. And seeing other artists. I'm a Lady Gaga fan. I've seen Lady Gaga 3 times. She has the same songs every time, maybe a couple new ones. But for the most part, every time I've seen her, every song was different. Every time I saw her
That's
on
awesome.
stage. And I love that. Because I don't want to, for me personally, I don't want to see an artist, if I love them that much and I go see them,
Do the same
every
thing.
time, the
Right.
same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%. And I would hope that most artists go about trying to make their songs interesting every single time that they play them. You know, like one of my favorite guitar players is Stevie Ray Vaughan. They say he didn't play the same solo every single night, which is amazing to me. But at the same time, you also, hear some of the doo-wop bands that go around and they play with tracks.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's because they want things to sound exactly like they sounded when people heard them.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different
there's not.
aspect of the art form, because it is commerce and art. And even though they are separate, they happen to be one within the same umbrella for most people outside of the understanding. You know?
Now, we performed the album. I mean, these songs they've gone through some iterations, man. We've iterated and iterated. We wrote this original idea of, instead of performing in a bar, in a tap room, at a club, because our songs are a little bit delicate, and they go through these long sweeping progressions, and they have a lot of movement, and so sometimes very delicate dynamics, sometimes very quiet. And if you're in a bar and you're playing a song and there's a really quiet part that's very sparse and very long,
Chances are it's not gonna get heard.
You're gonna hear Stacy over at the bar like, "Stacy, we need some shots. I need another vodka. Oh my God, you guys, come over here." And it's like, you're like, "Oh, don't mind me. I'm just pouring my heart out up here. This is just like everything that matters to me. Don't worry about it. Get a Jaeger shot from me too. I'm gonna need one after I cry after this song's over. No one heard it." That happens. So like I wrote this progression of songs and put them in a track order. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rent a theater. I rented a black box theater. We went and we worked with Trick Lock Performance Laboratory, downtown Albuquerque, my favorite theater group in town. I just love what they do. And you could put about 100 people in there if you stuff them real tight. And we had some slam poets come and open up for us.
Wow.
We had Tractor Brewing come in and pour handles so people could have a beer. But for the most part, people were sitting in an audience watching a musical performance on stage in a setting they're not used to. And so they got all those dynamics. They heard all the lyrics.
You made it a show.
Exactly.
You made it a concert.
And we did a really mediocre job the first time we did it because I bit off way more than I could chew. I was way too controlling. The second time we did it, I actually scripted out, and that was a show that I wrote called At Home. I scripted out how it was going to go.
That was so cool.
And the whole show, I came up with the idea that the whole show was going to be our last rehearsal before the show.
That's totally a musical theater thing.
Totally.
So the show took place in my living room. Man. We all wore pajamas on stage. We played it unplugged.
Drama thing if I've ever heard of.
Oh man, it was just great. So like I'm there. I wore my Star Trek pajamas. We had all our special guests, quote unquote, coming over. Like Kevin Herrig came and played with us. My dad came and played with us. Like,
awesome.
We just had a lot of fun. And I think the audiences really responded well enough to it that we as performers and them as audience members, we liked that a lot more than when they come to see us perform at a club. I know that the clubs are necessary, but if I'm going to make a set for a club, I'm going to play it way different than I would if I know I have your attention.
Without a doubt. And that's the beautiful thing about making an album. It's like you're not conforming to the format that people are going to listen to it, because people might listen to it in their car, in the shower, on their morning walks, while they're having some dinner, like however they're going to listen to it,
So you're a sculptor, right? Don't you work with sculpture? I've seen some of your work and it's very good.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Your work with, I think, just form in general, the way that you use what I would consider to be somewhat basic shapes, but they come across with a lot of movement. There's a lot of movement in what you do. I think it's so interesting. I was meditating on, here I am meditating now. Pretty soon I'm just going to be wearing a crystal necklace and being barefoot teaching yoga.
My chakras.
I'm going to have all my chakras in a line. Nothing wrong with good chakras. I was meditating on what it is I do when I was making this record the second time. We had released it to the Kickstarter backers. Then I was in Florida. It was just me and Howard in the room. I didn't have the musicians anymore. Some of the vocals got reperformed. A lot of things got cut, edited, changed, snipped, snapped, whatever you will. I was like, what is it that I'm doing artistically? Like, I want to capture what it is I'm after. And I always thought you would resonate with this. I always wanted to talk to you about this. I think as a musician with a recording, you start with a solid block of silence. And the sound is you carving a piece away of silence until what you're left with is a very different looking and sounding block of silence. But really that's what you're doing is you're carving silence. And that was how I started to approach recording. Was, okay, here's 40, how long is the album? I think I nailed it. It's 46 minutes. Classic.
Say 45, but yeah, you're
I
probably
think it's 46 minutes. Classic album. Ooh, I nailed it. I think I had 46 minutes of silence was exactly how I looked at it. And I said, okay, now I have black and I have silence. Now what piece of color or form or whatever needs to be here? And so what ended up happening was a lot of instruments got cut because it was too noisy and there wasn't enough of the block left. I had carved away everything and there wasn't enough structure. The sculpture was too skinny. And as I started to cut an instrument away, it brought back the silence and it brought form and structure back into my interaction as a listener.
It's a powerful thing, man. I mean, the idea you're talking about is, it's definitely an abstract, I think, philosophy that is a beautiful way to look at using a song as a blank canvas to then paint on, or literally like a slab of stone that you as a carver have kind of imagined maybe with another mold what you want to make, and then you start, cutting away all the wood. And obviously if you cut it all away, then there's not enough, air that can, represent what the sculpture is. But the idea of space being carved out, that's beautiful. I haven't ever even thought about that. I mean, I love it. I'm gonna have to nibble on that and think about it. Think about it, let you know, man. But I think it gets so intricate, with rhythm, with harmony, the colors that come from harmony, with melody, and what you're talking about with your experience of having stripped down what you already did is a powerful experience, because you realize simplicity is incredibly important, and there's so much elegance in simplicity. And not only that, but when you get to the essence of what the song is, sometimes you speak deeper to the idea of it. It's like sometimes people start painting something and they're trying to paint a flower and they kind of got something, but then they're like, no, I'm going to keep going. Like, oh man, no, I think I'm going to keep going. And they just keep going and keep going. And they're like, God dang it, I ruined the whole thing, you know? It's almost like with music, you're able to, you know, take those steps, take those layers off, you know?
I mean, ask yourself that question too when you're making that painting. This is the stuff that got me, because there's a lot of space out there, man. Like I went from a place where I know a lot of friends, a lot of family. I know every like booking manager in town, right? Like I could already just be part of the quote music scene. I moved to a place where there were some sea otters and an alligator and some peacocks and like 5 people and the beach.
So this is interesting. So you think that that philosophy came to you after you moved? So you think the role of being in solidarity also impacted how this idea came up for you?
What it was I drove down there and I had heard my, you know, you hear your album 1,000 million times before it comes out. I had heard this album
times,
making it, conceiving it, recording it. Like you heard it, April. Like everything on it was busy.
Yeah,
it was full. I had filled this silence to the point where I had a very thin sculpture, right? And then I got down there, and when I just listened to the music in the place that I was, it didn't feel right. It felt uncomfortable. And so in a place where I had banjo, guitar, piano, drums, bass, and 3 voices, it felt a lot more honest and more real to just have piano and 3 voices. And that was it. And now there's places on the album where if you listen to the Kickstarter album that our backers got, it's fun, it's upbeat, it's jaunty. There's a lot going on. If you listen to that same song, you might just hear a piano chord on one.
Yeah.
And I think that came from 2 things. One, it came from the space, totally. Our music's a product of where we're from. I have this Western feel in my songwriting that I cannot get out of it, no matter how hard I try, because I'm from Albuquerque. I'm from New Mexico. This is the West. That's what I sound like. This is where I bloomed. But also, the thought really was, am I painting a flower, or am I painting a room that has a flower in it? That was the real defining question of what is it that I'm making. And I think I'm really bad at drawing. I'm really bad at drawing. I think that it was because I always draw a flower or I draw a face. And I think the best artists, they take away everything but the face from the negative space on the page. Instead of making the lines make the face, they use the space to create a face.
Yeah.
And that's very different. It's a very different process.
I think there's beauty in both, for sure. I mean, there can be beauty in the simplicity of a very simple, basic flower or an intricate room with all of that. But like the experience also of having time between having put something out there and then to be able to edit it is amazing. You know what I mean? Like I recorded my album in January of 2016. And December of 2016, I released it unofficially, kind of out of the garage, the trunk of my car and stuff. But the year that ensued from January to December allowed me time to really think about each one of the songs and specifically the lyrics, because I had only recorded all the instrumental parts. Vocals I recorded much later. And I literally rewrote an entire perspective of a song. I had this song on my album that was about infidelity that I'd experienced, when I cheated on this girlfriend that I was dating. And I was writing this song from my perspective, saying, please, please, baby, we'll just stay. Please, come on. I know I messed up. Like, forgive me, And with time, I realized that was such a shallow idea of how I can truthfully, sing this story, because it was a direct story of an actual experience I had with someone.
Yeah.
And so I thought the more just and honest thing that I could have done is speak from her perspective. And so I changed the title from Would You Stay to Stay. And it's no longer Would You Stay, but I'm not going to stay here. Like with my integrity, I'm getting up and leaving,
That's a really good track too, man.
Thank you, bro. But I mean, had I not had that time, had months not passed and me listen to that song like you listen to songs over and over and over again, and you're like, maybe it's this, and then you say, no, let me just try doing this, and it's all of a sudden everything just falls into place, and you're finally happy with something. You know what I mean? It's like I think space, not just being in an area where you get a lot of silence and stuff like that, but also space with the music, like 6 months as opposed to recording it all and then in 4 months, going to vinyl or pressing everything out and everything being out to the people.
It takes a long time, and I mean,
it's a long time.
And poor April, you know, as speaking of the writing process, getting back to that, like I wrote these songs and then I brought them to these people.
Yeah.
We've learned them one way to perform them, learned them another way to record them, and then I went in there and changed the recording without anyone in there.
Learn another way to re-record.
But that's okay. It's a process. Like we sat down, and I think Julian and I probably sat down after he had approached me. Initially, we had our meeting about, like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and I really want you to please do this. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so we workshopped, just Julian and I workshopped a couple of the songs together. And then we brought in Maren and Ryan, and then we workshopped them with everyone together. And it, you know, I mean, it's a process. So for me to like see the start of something evolving, it may completely change, and that's okay. It's just the process. And sometimes you go back to the original because that's better than what you were coming up with,
Very true.
you know, or whatever, or somewhere in the middle. But I think that's the beauty of it. Is you can do that, you know, and you have the time to be able to do that. And especially when you're working with such amazing musicians, it makes it easy. Like it really, to me, I didn't feel like the process of creating this song, like you started out with what you wanted, but then we created something, all of us together, into this beautiful piece. I mean, I totally forgot. I was like my whole like purpose of this.
Thinking about it.
I was like, it's in my head, and then where did it go? Where am I going with this?
But it's, you know what? The
What's
reason
happening?
I robbed you guys of
Am
a
I
lot
in a
of the
room?
process.
Oh,
I told
sorry.
you. That's what happened. Like, where am I? What is this? Are these microphones?
No, okay, I got it. Okay, so but you're working with such amazing people, and it's not hard. It's just not hard. It's so easy.
I thought it was
so
hard.
simple. To me, I didn't think it was hard.
I think
Maybe
I always make
sometimes-
that joke of like when you have a great band, you ain't got to work very hard up here. Like they just sound good, and I'm just like moving around. You know what I mean? It's like,
That's the
That's my
truth,
jam.
though. Once you find that, that's true.
having a great band does a whole lot for you.
Wild Humans makes me look so good and smart, right? Like, and the truth is, like, when we did workshop with the band, we'd be sitting there. There's a song in the album, Lost. Lost is one of my favorite songs. It turned out really well. It's got a great banjo.
Actually,
tone.
Lost was one of the hardest ones I had to like figure out.
Oh, it was
harmonies.
tough.
It was tough.
Singing was tough, but we wrote it and
Yeah.
we got through it. And April and I workshopped it on our own and brought us the band. And then Maren kind of really shaped it by bowing her upright bass instead of plucking it.
So good.
And then I fell in love with bowed upright bass, and so then I had
Oh,
her.
yeah.
I had her have the bow out all the time now, and she, you know, so that changed our whole dynamic for a lot of other songs. And then in that song, Ryan was sitting there with his mandolin. I think we were taking a smoke break. Smoke breaks where all the good jam ideas happen.
Tell me
man.
about it, bro.
And we're taking a smoke break, and then Ryan's sitting there, and he starts playing this A minor to B minor, which I would never do, ever. Oh my goodness, it was against all my sensibilities inside of that chord progression.
Yeah.
He started just jamming out back and forth between those two, and then all of a sudden I said, "Wait, keep playing that, keep playing that, keep playing that, Maren, come here." And we started jamming it out, and then now that's one of my favorite moments on the album is where you're in the middle of this almost like country. I don't want to say country because it's Western. Those are the two kinds of music, right?
Yeah.
It's Western, and it's like this Western feeling folk song, and there's this beautiful lilting, almost musical theater, like counterpuntal melodies that April and I are singing with each other, and then they form into harmonies, and then they break apart. We worked really hard on that, and then all of a sudden there's like a jazz breakdown with banjo in the middle of a song, and it was completely Ryan's fault that I can't unhear that section anymore. It's like that happy accident. So yeah, Wild Human, like these guys, they made all the songs come to life. Everybody in the group
Played a
of
role,
the core,
right? Yeah.
They all are in the tracks, in the compositions,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
in these subtle ways that you could never imagine. It's part of the seasoning.
I love it, man. I love it. Guys, we're going to take a short break and we will be right back. And we're back. So what I wanted to ask you something about was one of my favorite songs on the tunes, one of my favorite songs on the album, which is New Orleans Rain. And tell me a little bit about that and the inspiration from that. Was that from the time that you went there? How did that song come to be?
That's a really good question. I'm really glad you asked me that. I can't tell you how glad I am you asked me that. Okay. New Orleans Rain is from the city of New Orleans. When I started to really make Wild Humans a part of the fabric of my life, and the gravity brought me a lot of new people and a lot of new energies in my life, one of them was that I met a new partner, and very quickly she became this sort of like energy that we co-created. She's a designer, a theater professional as well, and does a lot of our visuals, a lot of our artwork, a lot of and just generally like helps us design, helps us with costumes for live shows, is a great eye and really was just there, right? And we came together and just had this sort of cosmic like, oh my God, we're supposed to be together kind of thing. She was working, we got together, and 2 months later she was like, I gotta go to New Orleans. I was like, New Orleans, why? You don't leave. That's awful. Stay here forever. Just be next to me, right? Like, it turns out she was stage managing for Tulane for their summer program. They were doing the Tulane Shakespeare stuff. And there's another really near and dear person in my heart who lives in New Orleans, and that's where she stays. So Star, who is my partner to this day and is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and our friend Destiny, and like there's a human named Destiny in New Orleans that all of a sudden, like, in order to like keep our relationship close, I didn't want to be apart from her. So I was like, I'm going to visit New Orleans. I'm going to come visit you. Is that okay? And so I went down there, and me and Star were staying with these basically who are now like my chosen family. These wonderful 3 human beings who have a house in P-Town. It's pretty near Mid-City. Shout out to Pete, the P-Town Peacock. Shout out to Carrollton Station. Shout out to that whole neighborhood, because, oh my goodness, New Orleans, as soon as I got there, I felt at home. That's one of my favorite cities in the world. If you had to force me to pick a city to live in forever right now, with a gun to my head, I would pick New Orleans. You know what I mean, too, because I know you spend a lot of time there. The vibe there, the humans, the culture, it's older than America. It's older than it's outside of any sort of nationality. It is just any day the big one could come and wipe us all out. We got to just live today. We got to party today. They like to drink. They like to play music. They love to eat great food. And they're this just happiness and togetherness. They like to talk to strangers in public about real stuff, not just small talk. It's honesty. You're wearing it on the outside. So I went down there and I had nothing to do because they were all working. Like, I kind of didn't think this through. Like, I went to visit and they were all working on all these plays and everything. And so I had all this time. And so in the song New Orleans Rain, which is the first track on the album, and I love it, there was just a day where I was hanging out at home, and I guess it had been a long time since I had a rainstorm in my life, like a real rainstorm, one that just kind of goes on and on and on. And it was the summer, so it was too hot for words. And this sort of blessed rainstorm came in and just sat on the city for like 4 days. And by the third day, I was just okay that it was raining everywhere. Right? Initially, as a New Mexican, you're like, I'm not going outside. It's raining. And then
I'll melt.
Right? Can't drive in this. It's wet. Like, And then by the third day, you're like, man, I kind of just have to go outside. Like, I don't want to be in this house anymore. I was sitting on the back porch, and the rain was at this level that also in New Mexico, we won't understand this, but worldwide people know there's this light drizzling rain that is eternal in New Orleans. It's just like this little, and all of a sudden, like, all these pitters and patters kind of turn into almost a consistent arpeggio in my head. And you don't hear it on the finished version, but when I wrote it, I was listening to a rainstorm and I was playing along with it on, the top 3 strings of the guitar. And so the whole song started with this boom, and that was a reaction. I was reacting musically to what I was hearing in my environment of this rain. And so New Orleans Rain wrote that song. I was just kind of taking it from the environment. Everything in the song is hyper specific to that trip. The song comes in and it talks about photos of our family, the crooked frames. That's a place in that house with those people. Cracks in ancient concrete, broken lanes is the second line. And you've been in New Orleans, you know that all the concrete's cracked.
Oh yeah.
And the rain is breaking concrete. It's breaking to the point where there's just holes into the middle of nowhere in the middle of the
I
street.
love that analogy, the thinking that like rain is splitting the street open.
Right.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And it's like the river of eternity, which is the Mississippi. If you go down there, it's just a part of everything. And the idea that it only flows one way. And I was coming out of this past looking for my future and realizing that there was no use in trying to reach back. You either swim up the current or you swim with it. And if you swim with it, you feel a lot better. And then even the second verse, it's footsteps on the wooden floor, squeaks and strains, echoes in our memory, sound and space. And that was literally just the floors in these houses in New Orleans are all warped and cracked. And when you walk on them with your bare feet, and that was me hearing these wonderful people in this house that I was staying with that were having me in their life, that were having me in their home. And they were so welcoming and honest and familial with me, even though I was a total stranger who was just dating their house guests that they really loved.
Yeah.
They were so welcoming to me that the creaks of them walking on the wooden floor were something that was really important to my memory, were really important to my ears, and it was something that endeared me to them in some way, and I had to capture that. And then there's the idea that the next line, time will flow through everything. It's all the same. And it was the idea that the concrete's going to crack, the floor is going to warp, we're going to crack and warp and die and leave. We're all the same thing. We're all made of literally the same thing, and time is going to break all of us down to pieces, right? And then the chorus of the song really is the refrain, teach me what it means to be at home. And that was my takeaway from my time there with that family, was that I think coming from my background, my family is somewhat separate and segmented. I didn't have this experience of just a whole group of people living in a house just loving each other unconditionally. And that trip taught me that feeling of being at home again. And of course, the last verse, the song goes out, smiles behind cigarettes on the back porch again, which was everybody in the house smokes cigarettes. They all sit on the back porch smoking them. And you get these smiles that come off the glow at night. And I remember seeing these smiles that were lit with orange cigarette butts. And I remember their faces and that imagery, right? And like loving hugs and no regrets in the fleeting time of men, right? There's that sense of not being eternal and being immortal again, and being reminded that we're all going to be broken down by the rain or the wind or whatever weathers us. And then the song finishes, I remember everything. I never will forget. Echoes in our memory. And that's it. And it plays out. And I think that was, I mean, lyrically and from a composition standpoint, that was one of to me one of the most impressive things I was able to accomplish on the record.
It's a beautiful song.
It is, man. And I'm definitely, with your permission, gonna play that song out of this episode because it's my favorite, just for the imagery that it brought up to me whenever I was listening to it and listened to it again and again. I was like, he had to have written that when he was over there. Like, this is about that vibe, you know. I know that vibe. I love it, man.
Thank you so much.
It's been amazing having both you guys on the podcast to talk a little bit about this album that you guys are putting out. Now, tell me once again the name of this album, because this is your first official album. I know you guys kind of sort of put an EP out a little while ago, but this will be the first official big release. What's the name of the album for everybody to be checking out?
I felt like there was only one way to call it.
Wild Humans?
That's it.
That's right. It's a self-titled album. And it's going to be available very, very, very soon for people. You guys got a show coming up. You guys got a New Year's Eve show coming up. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. One of my favorite groups in New Mexico and anywhere that plays music and has fun and throws these parties is our good friends over at the band Red Light Cameras. Mm-hmm. They are throwing a black and white New Year's masquerade party at Launchpad downtown Albuquerque. Everybody's going to be there, so you have to be too. And we will be performing along with a couple other acts. I think we'll be a little bit earlier in the night because we're not turned up.
Sure.
The way that some groups are, but we will absolutely be live. So I think doors are at 8, and you can get your tickets online if you're on Facebook or you just want to go over to the Launchpad's website. Check out, just type into Google Launchpad.
I'll put some links to this as well as y'all's website and anything else you guys want me to link to. But you guys are also going to be having a listening party. This is pretty cool because it's a different way of how people can put their music out there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So we were talking about Maya Fayreese, and her. So I've known Maya and her sister Zoe, and their mom Kari, who Akari is one of the most amazing theater professionals here.
Incredible.
And April has a beautiful connection to them. And
I do.
I mean, you can tell them about that space. I mean, it's
yeah, it's the Growing Stage space, basically off of Manolan, Louisiana area. We kind of share a building with the Chili's. I love this family. I'm an instructor there. I'm the music director and accompanist for our Tiny Tots program, for our 3 to 6 year olds. So that's my connection with them. But yeah, this listening part, it's going to be there. And again, Julian and I were talking about this, like making it a little bit different, because with bands anymore, it's really hard with just the social media and everything like that. So we want to make this a really special experience. And I think that's something that we tend to do with anything that we do in when we're putting on a show. It's not the typical let's go to a bar and listen to a band kind of thing. We want people to listen and be present. So I think that's important for us. So that's what this CD release is about. It's a listening party. It's a chance for people to come in and listen not only to us, but in another way as well. I don't want to give anything too much.
Give it all away.
Yeah, give it all away.
Make them come out.
Okay, so we'll be playing some songs. We'll be singing, but we'll also be sharing a little bit of our album. And then we're going to have a little talk back, a little Q&A after, so that people know our process. They can kind of get a chance to know us a little bit better. We're human, we want to share that experience with people. I think it's important, just because music, of course, is very important to both of us, but the things that we go through in life, music has helped everyone. Whatever experience you're going through. And I try and push that onto my kids, because I'm a voice and piano instructor, and I think music is so important to have in your life. So that's our process. That's who we are. And so we want to share that process with the people that are coming. Yeah,
but you can come and listen to the album with us, and then we'll play a song. We'll dim the lights. We can all get moody with it. And then we're going to bring the lights up, and I want to we're going to have a curated conversation about what we just heard, and how it made everybody feel, and what they took away from it, and how it touches their life. And they can ask us any questions they want about how it touches ours. So that'll be it. And it's on January 6th. It's going to be in the early evening. I don't have a link for you social media-wise yet, but probably by the time this airs, I will have one, so you can throw that up with the other ones.
Of course.
Absolutely. So just go to Art Talk Music for anything you need. Just go to Claudio Toulouse and just love all of his stuff. Get all your links there.
Thank you guys so much for coming on this podcast and talking to me a little bit about your process, about the story of how you guys came to know each other and how you guys came to start working with each other. And I'm so excited for what's to come from Wild Humans,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudio. Well, I hope we'll be back.
Of course, we will definitely do another one. Maybe we'll get more of the bandmates in here and maybe do like an in-studio performance. I know you brought your guitar this time, but sadly, since we got a little pushback, we gotta boogie on out of here. But we will do a live performance in studio next time, and that would be so awesome. So
that'd be great.
Thank you so much, April. Thank you, Julian, for coming on.
Of course.
And you guys follow Wild Humans and keep an eye out for that album that's coming your way, self-titled. Oh, yeah. Thank y'all for listening to Art Talk Music.
Photos of our family, crooked frames, cracks in ancient concrete, broken lanes, the river of eternity only flows one way, and you can't put a stop to it, just like New Orleans rain. Footsteps on the wooden trains, echoes in our memory, sound in space. Time will flow through everything. It's all the same, and we wash away completely in the warm New Orleans rain. Teach me what it means to be at home. Well, I know. Teach me what it means to be at home, to be at home with you. Time will flow through everything. It's all the same. It'll wash away completely in the warm New Orleans rain. Teach me what it means to be at home. Teach me what it means to be at home, to be at home with you. Smiles behind cigarettes on the back porch again. Loving hugs and no regrets in the fleeting lives of men. I remember everything, I never will forget. Echoes in our memory,
Oh, yeah. That is New Orleans Rain. As I said, we had to start with that song after that beautiful description that Julian put out. Now we're going to continue with another song called Origin Square. And right after that's done, we're going to jump right into the very first song you heard coming into this episode called Muscle Memory. So sit back and enjoy the sweet sounds of Wild Humans playing Origin Square.
I had a life and a house. I had a girl I was crazy about, and we had all the toys and the friends. It like any real good thing, it came to an end. To an end. Like any good thing, it came to an end. I woke up gasping for air. that feeling you get when you wake up in a strange place. How many months have I lived here? And this feeling just won't go away, go away, go away. Yeah, this feeling I get just won't go away. I met a girl that I liked, and she gave me the mountains, she gave me the sky. And everything's going to be fine. That is until I open my mouth and I let too much fly. And it's I wake up gasping for air. How many times will I land myself there? Back to the origin square. It's teaching me patience, it's teaching me care. In me care. Yeah, it's teaching me patience, it's teaching me care. Every morning feels like it's resting on my shoulders. Every morning feels like I'm in the past, but older. Every morning, endless rows of half-built houses. Every morning, goodbye, what's so good about it? Every morning, endless rows of half-built houses. Every morning, oh, I know I told you so. All I want is to, all I want is to hold you like the body holds the rain, and let our muscle memories fade. All I want is to, all I want is to hold you like the stone cloud holds the rain, and let our muscle memories fade. Let our muscle memories fade. All I want is to, all I want is to hold you like the binding holds the page, and let our muscle memories fade. All I want is to, all I want is to hold you like the shoreline holds a wave, and let our muscle memories fade. Let our muscle memories fade. life for someone who I can love fiery without taking torch to. I have been waiting my whole life for someone just like you. Then I wake up and then I see you, a smile there upon your face. Yes, and I wake up and then I see you. I know it's going to be okay. Oh well, yes, then I wake up. Oh well, yes, then I wake up. And I know it's gonna be okay, okay. I've been waiting my whole life for someone who I can love fiery without taking torch to. I have been waiting my whole life for someone just like you. Someone who I can love fiery without taking torch to. I've been waiting my whole life for someone just like you. All I want is to hold you like the binding holds the page. We ever slowly fall away and lay down on some memories.